Geneva.
To our right you can see the Red Cross buildings, and it's interesting because yesterday we went to a Quaker house where the Quaker mission is based, and you'll see how these buildings are really quite grand, and by contrast the Quaker house was very, very modest and very homely. The interesting thing that we took from that particular meeting was just how a different approach, a much more humble, much more maybe can affect the way in which you interact with people during meetings and essentially produce like maybe more successful outcomes.
It was just amazing really, because almost without exception everyone else we've met, or people that seem to be around, they have really big egos, and you get the impression that a lot of their work is to nurse their egos, to work their way up their organisations and to promote themselves rather than like true belief in what they're doing. Like, I guess the motives behind what human rights. But the Quakers, no.
It's like all of their action, their proactiveness is born out of humility and the aim to just make the world a better place.
And actually she was very insightful in showing us that although there's a lot of posturing in the Human Rights Council and there's a lot of posturing in the General Assembly, real change comes about through the diplomatic negotiations, through the human contact between individuals in benign environments in which people don't feel threatened. And she was unthreatening and yet compelling at the same time.
So much of our history as a Jewish people informs what we're interested in now. For example, Lee and I are both interested in the refugee issue, and it's interesting that may be partly because of our history as Jewish people as refugees, and that we empathise with that particular issue. And so maybe from the Quaker point of view, they have encountered a lot of discrimination and persecution through the years, and that
these are the issues they care about now.
Yeah, it motivates them to look after people who are persecuted themselves.
And who'd have thought that the Quakers have been so involved in civil liberties and human rights over the past few hundred years? They abolished slavery. Amazing.
Very knowledgeable, very interesting, some off-the-record comments about Ban Ki-moon, which won't be repeated.
What seems to be the strength of Human Rights Watch is they, unapologetically focus on just one aspect of the field, and in response to a question about what they actually do on the ground from a grassroots perspective, she really stressed that what they do is research, and it's the quality of their research that makes them successful. So I think that, to me, that kind of indicates that that's what should be happening, that organisations should really focus on their absolute strengths, perfect that to the point that no one can challenge them. She said no one can question their research, and then make links with other organisations that focus on a different stage of the work. And I think that's really important when figuring out how one can best advance the field of human rights.
Commission was really interesting. I just found it quite frustrating how you're barred from speaking about anything political in a diplomatic realm.
Well, you can, yeah, exactly. You can try, but they'll just give you the same, like, non-substantive answers. You don't really say anything at all.
Yeah, and it worries me that that is the essence of what's going on in Geneva, in that they reject the fact that politics and the law, international law, go hand in hand. And in rejecting politics, they reject an essential element that is required for the resolution of problems.
Yeah, they'll basically they'll tell you like facts, like they'll tell you about institutions, or they'll tell you about what's going on, things that aren't in dispute. But anything to do with like political opinions, they just can't really give an opinion. Because like the guy said, before he makes a statement, he has to go and get it checked by Washington, and Washington normally write it.
Yeah.
So you're the government's like puppet, being a diplomat.
Entirely powerless.
That's why it wouldn't appeal to me as a job.
There will be no white flag above my door.
Talk about the souring of English and American relationships due to the Lockerbie saga that is currently going on.
Yeah, absolutely. There wasn't necessarily enough time to talk about these things. That would be very
I wonder
interesting,
whether that will have an impact on their relations at the UN, whether they'll form a less solid block there, or whether it's more on the international scene.
Well, let's try and find out. We're meeting the UK tomorrow. Let's try and find out about the Lockerbie. Let's get to the heart of it. Why did they release him? It's our mission.
And I will go down with this ship, and I won't put my hands up and surrender. There will be no white flag above my door. I'm in love, and always will be. And when we meet, which I'm sure we will, all that was there.
So yesterday we saw Carolina, a Swedish lady who worked for UNHCR, who was very insightful about the situation of refugees and how that's developed since the end of the Second World War. And we viewed a film, asked some interesting questions, and she spoke. One of the things that particularly stayed in my mind was the meeting they had with Italian journalists to put together a code of conduct to ensure that newspaper editors and writers were not too inflammatory in their headlines or in their coverage, and were sensitive as to the use of certain words and phrases and images and inferences, which we should have in Britain, because our tabloids would benefit from that.
Good morning. So we just came out of the UK mission to the UN. It was very insightful, most interesting.
It was really interesting. She spoke to us really frankly about the issues, and she gave us a real insight. I think maybe because we were British, we had that connection there. There was much less reservation about the way she spoke, about the way that politics was going on the Human Rights Council.
We've encountered a lot of rhetoric on this trip, and it was really encouraging to meet someone who was finally honest. Unfortunately, we can't share any of it with you because we were bound by Chatham House rules.
Yeah, so we can't tell you anything, but you've got to trust us on that. Really insightful.
Don't you know, we're talking about a revolution sounds. Don't you know, talking about a revolution sounds like a whisper. While they're standing in the welfare lines, crying at the doorsteps of those armies of salvation, wasting time in the unemployment line.